Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now I've been enjoying the heck out of the new Xbox Series X, and a big part of that is because Microsoft did an excellent job with backwards compatibility. There are literally hundreds of previous generation games playable on the new hardware. However, I was able to find some games that I think they should probably add, and so I have them here. We're going to talk about those in this video, and at the end, I'm going to be a little bit greedy. Let's take a look. All right, we're going to start with a series, a franchise, and that is, of course, you can see it here, the James Bond series. I am shocked that there are no 007 James Bond games that I can find in any of the backwards compatible games. And the reason why I care at all is because if you played some of these games, you know that actually in the last couple decades, there have been some fantastic James Bond games that have come out. And I want to be able to play those in glorious 4K and also, expose them to a new audience. And when it comes to James Bond games, I'd like to see added to backwards compatibility. Well, for me, it starts with Agent Under Fire and also Nightfire, because those were really cool first-person shooters, and it was almost like a rebirth of the franchise. EA just brought their A game here. These were really cool games. It's kind of funny, you go back and play them now, and yeah, the AI is a little bit brain dead, but man, these are absolute classics, and they deserve to be preserved. And you guys know that probably my favorite James Bond game is Everything or Nothing. That's where they took it into the third person, and well, they kind of basically just made a brand new James Bond movie from start to finish with this game. They poured a ton of money into it, and for the most part, I think it really is probably my favorite James Bond game. But then on the 360, well, you have to talk about Bloodstone, because that was an all new game. It wasn't designed to be around a movie release or anything like that. I've talked about this game in the past, and it might be my second favorite James Bond game, because it just does everything right. It has a third person shooting, it's got driving, it's got excitement, it's got Daniel Craig. There is nothing that I don't like about it. And then Quantum of Solace is a really good James Bond game. It's not perfect, but it is very enjoyable. And so, I'm thinking that the issue here is probably licensing. I get it. It's probably expensive, and, EA and Activision, who else, owns these franchises and these licenses, probably goes, I don't know if it makes sense to relicense them for a new platform, but I don't know. I just think it would be really cool to support these games going forward. They're quality, they deserve it. Next, I want to mention Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance 1 and 2. These are top-down Diablo-style action RPGs, and they're absolutely fantastic. Now, originally when I played these, I didn't really get them because I didn't see the need, because I was coming off of the classic, turn-based, hardcore D&D style Baldur's Gate games that were on PC, and, I'd played Diablo, and so I didn't see the point of these. But I guess the point of these is that, it took those great stories, that great Forgotten Realms location, and then they brought it over to console, and they basically just made the game accessible for a whole other gaming generation. And so I have a whole new appreciation for these games now. I've gone back over the years and really enjoyed them a lot, especially since they support two-player co-op. That's a ton of fun. You and your friends sitting on the couch playing these games, you'll have the best time. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I did exactly that with Kinsey. She came over, we played, I believe it was Baldur's Gate 1, had a blast doing it. And so they're quality games. They definitely deserve to be added to backwards compatibility. Next one is going to be a bit of a controversial one, but I'm going to do it anyways because I think I'm justified in adding this. So that is Thief Deadly Shadows. This is technically the third Thief game in the series, and in many ways, it Well, it pissed a lot of fans off of the original series, and I get it, because the original series, you know, the first and second one were on PC, they were first person, they were definitely they weren't exactly open world, but they allowed you to solve and play through those games, you know, any way you wanted to. You're able to be very creative. Now, when they brought it over to the Xbox and they did Deadly Shadows, they had to make some compromises to this game in order to get it to work on the console at the time. And so one of those things that they did is they made it third person. I think they probably did that to maybe appeal to, you know, a console audience. But really the big issue here that a lot of people had a problem with is the city is much more confined, and quite frankly, the game doesn't run very well on the original Xbox. You see me playing it right here. There is massive slowdown because this game is doing a ton of work with the real-time lighting and all the different mechanics that are going on here. And so it's a bit of a mess on the original Xbox, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I played and I finished, I beat this game. I actually enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was a decent Thief game. However, the reason why I'd like to see it ported over to, say, the Xbox Series X is, I believe in doing that, all of those frame rate issues and those performance issues would just go away, and a great game would potentially shine through, because that was the big problem with this. Even going back and capturing this footage for this video, I was reminded just how painful the performance was here. And so it would be really cool to get this game upscaled to 1080p or 4K, running at a higher, you know, resolution, higher frame rate. I think that would basically go a long way into just making this game a lot better. Next up is a game I'm contractually obligated to mention, and that, of course, is SSX Tricky, the second game in the series, and a lot of people would argue that it is the best one in the series, and I can't deny that. I played a ton of this game when it first came out, even though the third game is technically my favorite, and the third game is on backwards compatibility for the Xbox, but for some reason they left off Tricky, and I think that is definitely, that's a crime. That should not be allowed, because in many ways both games are very different from each other. In many ways, SSX Tricky is actually more arcadey, if that makes sense, especially in the level design. There is nothing realistic about the level design in Tricky, and in doing so, that actually makes the game a lot of fun. However, I suspect the issue with this game getting ported over or added to backwards compatibility is probably the licensing. This game has a lot of Hollywood actors doing the voices, as well as a lot of great, excellent licensed music. But I suspect that EA could do it if they wanted to. Like I said, they brought the third one. All I'm saying is, you know, I'm not going to be greedy. I'm not going to say, you know, any of the other ones. I think if you want to have the best SSX experience, well, you should either play Tricky or 3, and that's it. That's good. And so if they never do any other SSX games going forward, just having those two playable, you know, on a modern console, hey, I'd be happy. Here is another controversial pick, but I am sticking to it because I absolutely loved Alpha Protocol, the espionage RPG. This was made by Obsidian, which has a great history of making excellent RPGs, and Sega. Now, initially, this game did ship kind of buggy. And the other issue with this game is it was confusing to people when you first played it, myself included. So, you know, this is technically, well, it's not technically, it's basically a James Bond-like RPG. And what's confusing about it is that you will be trying to shoot an enemy and you're lining up your sights and you're missing. And it makes you feel like the game is almost broken, but it's not, because essentially what it's doing, it's taking into account the role-playing aspect of it. So for instance, in the beginning of the game, your stats are low, and so it can be very frustrating not knowing exactly why you are struggling so much. You know, when you first start playing this game, it can be a little off-putting, but the great thing about this game is that if you stick with it, if you dig into the RPG elements of this game, it's incredibly rewarding, incredibly satisfying. Also, this game gives you a ton of choice when it comes to your character and the story. So much so that when you get to the end, it's one of those games, you know, almost like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, where you'll play it, you'll beat it, and then you'll talk to a friend who's played this game, and you'll have completely different experiences throughout the game. It's so much fun. It's so rewarding. A couple months ago, I was watching another YouTuber play through this game, and I was reminded again just why I enjoyed it so much. Is it perfect? No. But it is very unique, and it definitely deserves to be added to backwards compatibility. Next up is a game I keep bringing up over and over again, and I will continue to do so until it gets the recognition that it deserves, and that is Blur on the Xbox 360. Basically, this game is a kind of more realistic version of Mario Kart. So think it's a mix of, say, Need for Speed and Mario Kart style pickups and weapons. And so in many ways, this racing game is such a joy to play. It's a crime that it never got the recognition or the sales or the sequel that it deserved, because it's just a game that I keep going back to time and time again. It's one of those games kind of like Split Second, where for whatever reason, it just came out at the wrong time. Maybe the marketing wasn't right. Maybe the word of mouth wasn't there. It just didn't get the recognition it deserves. It is a fantastic game, and I'd love to see it get a second life with backwards compatibility. Next up is another game that's got a little bit of controversy, especially when it was originally released, and that is Manhunt. And, you know, I struggled in deciding if I was going to include this game because I think it's a little bit of forgotten in all of, Rockstar's great back catalog. I don't think a lot of people go, wow, I really want to kind of go back and play Manhunt. However, I will tell you that I was going back and capturing the footage for this video, and while the game definitely looks dated and in many ways it's kind of simple, however, I was amazed at how I got sucked back into it, and also kind of how intense and terrifying this game can be. And so the idea behind this game essentially is that you are a convict and you wake up in this environment that is set up to essentially be the world's biggest snuff film. And then in your ear is the director of this film, and he's telling you how to go through here and essentially kill as many of these people, survive as long as you can to satisfy his bloodlust for this film. It's a crazy premise, and for the most part, it works really well. But what it really plays like is a survival horror game, or kind of like a stealth game, actually. And you're going through here, you're picking up different weapons, you're killing different guys. It's just all brutality all the time. And, I can understand it's definitely a turnoff for some people. I remember when I first played it, I was like, wow, this is really over the top. I mean, it was almost like it was designed to push buttons, to see just how far Rockstar could push, gamers and what they would tolerate as far as a narrative goes. However, like I said, as a game, it's actually pretty good. And again, it's a little bit forgotten when it comes to Rockstar releases. And there's not really much reason to necessarily add it, because in many ways you can actually do a lot of the gameplay mechanics that are in this game in, say, Grand Theft Auto. But there's just something about these games. They're so creepy. They're so disturbing. And so it would be really cool to see them, get backwards compatibility. I think that'd be pretty neat. Next up is a first-person shooter that when I originally played, I was blown away by. It's a total hidden gem that definitely deserves to be discovered by a whole new audience, especially if it was running on new hardware in 4K. That, of course, is Singularity. In many ways, this will probably look like a traditional first-person shooter, and it kind of starts off that way, but it's got a really hardcore sci-fi element to it, and its big mechanic is that you eventually, very quickly in the beginning of this, earn the ability to manipulate time within the level. And so this gameplay mechanic is very cool because you'll use it to get past parts that you're stuck in, or maybe take out enemies, or essentially just solve puzzles in really interesting and very clever ways. This is a game that I absolutely enjoyed when I first played it. I can't wait to go back and play it again. And, it's just one of those games where if they were to add it to Game Pass, I just think it would just find a whole new audience. Such a killer game. Definitely check out Singularity. Next up is another first-person shooter that doesn't get enough love, and that is Darkwatch. Darkwatch is a really cool, unique game because it mixes steampunk with horror, and it takes place almost like a Western. You play this guy who is an outlaw gunfighter. His name's Jericho Cross, and he has been turned into a vampire, and he's not happy about it. And so what's cool about this game is that even though it plays very much like a traditional first-person shooter, because you're a vampire, you have all those vampiric powers too. And there is a morality system in this game. So at certain points, you'll be able to choose to be either good or bad, and then that will affect the overall story. I absolutely love it when games do that because it adds that little bit of role-playing in it that makes you really kind of connect with the character, plus it adds replayability. And what's cool about this game is that it was developed by High Noon Studios, which went on to make a bunch of the Call of Duty games. So they know what they're doing when it comes to shooting. And then at the end here, I'm gonna be a little bit greedy, because it would be really cool if Microsoft got rid of all of the region locking if you played previous generation Xbox games on the new hardware. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, the original Xbox and the 360 were region locked. That means that there were games that came out in other regions that we never got and we can't play. So wouldn't it be cool if one of the selling points of getting the Xbox series of consoles was that you could suddenly play or download through the store, or it was included in Game Pass, all these games you didn't get to play? That would be amazing. And the reason why I say that, and the reason why I get excited, is because in Japan, there were a ton of excellent shoot 'em ups that came out on the 360. So much so that if you watch my video on my trip to Japan, that was one of the things I really wanted to get, were all those really excellent shoot 'em ups that we just never got. And I'll be honest, when I got my Xbox Series X, one of the first things I did was pop in a bunch of those games to see if they would work, crossing my fingers that Microsoft got rid of the region locking. But sadly, it is still there, and I'm not really sure why. Now, I know most of you are not going to go out and, buy a bunch of these physical games. You're not going to go on eBay because they're very expensive, and I know that the market would be relatively small for these. However, consider for a moment, again, that if they're added to backwards compatibility, often they are included to the Microsoft Store so that anybody can buy them. And also, they're often added to Game Pass. That would be a huge win because some of these games, actually most of these games, many of them that you're seeing right here, they still play fine today. They're still considered classics. And so I'm not sure if Microsoft would be interested in doing this. I'm not sure about the legality of it. I don't know how hard it would be, but I know it would be possible, and I think it would be awesome. So, Microsoft, please make that happen. I think it'd be so cool. All right, guys. Well, those are my picks of games I would love to see Microsoft add to backwards compatibility on the Xbox series of consoles. However, in many ways, this is a companion piece to a video I did about the Xbox One about a year or so ago. And in that one, I talked about some games that you're probably wondering, where is Timesplitters? Where are some of those games at? Well, I talked about those in the previous video, and I think as of now, they still haven't added Timesplitters. At least add the second and third one. It'd be so killer. Anyways, guys, love to know what other games you'd like to see Microsoft bring to backwards compatibility. And also, what do you think about region locking? Am I crazy in thinking that'd be kind of cool? I don't know. Why not, right? If they've done the work, why not just do it? I think that'd be so cool. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.